Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and today we are in the Philosophical Midwifery book, and we are in chapter 2, which is the chapter on the pathologos, that thing that we are after, which is the new class of human problems. If you're interested in psychotherapy, this is what you're really interested in. If you're interested in understanding the mind, this is what you're really interested in. If you're a human being that has goals and therefore will inevitably face blocks, this is what you're interested in. So if you are anyone, you want to be interested in understanding the nature of the pathologos. So what is the pathologos? That's what we've been talking about. Last time we reflected on it being a certain fundamental false belief about the nature of self and reality that becomes, looking at the notes over here, that has certain qualities. Just a quick review. Let's jump into the forward. We talked about last time how it is monadic. It is a oneness. It manifests numerous occurrences of itself. It can create. It comes from a certain dramatic scene, which was section 2. The conditions for the transmission, the nature of that dramatic scene. It comes from a dramatic scene. It's cyclical. We have the ups and downs, and we repeat the same kinds of cycles in our lives caused by the pathologos. We have a bunch of problems. So that monadic quality is a bunch of problems that are linked together into a unity, which means because they're linked, there is a way of understanding those linkages and the connections and tracing it back to determine the origin of all of our problems. Hooray! Wouldn't it be great to know the origin of our problems? Yes, and that's why we're here. We have a network of beliefs that work together within the monad of the pathologos, that work like meshing gears that support each other. It becomes a living dialectic, which is the fundamental relationship of the paradigmatic, or the model of thinking, or the model of relationships. And meaning that we can, this is what we are seeking to understand in philosophy, but the implications being, if we're not doing midwifery, then we are going to be a living dialectic of what's harming us, what's false, bad, and harmful. So we need to be doing midwifery to get rid of this living dialectic, and doing philosophy to be learning the correct one. So it functions through successive refinements in our life, starting as a basic image of ourselves, becoming a mask we wear, becoming our persona, becoming a characteristic way of relating to ourselves in the world. This is the way we be. And then as it follows a dialectic, there is a conclusion or a goal. That other becomes the self. Only it's the false idea of the self. So we end up in our lives being identified with the false idea of ourselves. It becomes our identity. There's also the sword and the shield, or the shield and the sword, the defense, the counterattacks. The defense is a loyalty to the basic old beliefs, and the attack is against our newly won understanding, the good things that we get from this podcast and this series. It undermines our conclusions that we make. That's how it defends and attacks. Our conclusions are doubted, the methods are challenged, and our mind is flooded with doubt and disbelief. So that's the nature of the pathologos. Here it is, functioning as a block towards our goals. And we also talked about the condition of the last section we read was the condition for the transmission. So we had to have been young enough to not realize that beauty and truth are not intertwined in the physical world, as they might be in the realm of being that we seek to understand and experience through philosophy. We have to be in a dependent relationship with our parents, usually, or parental surrogates. We have to still have a belief in authority, which you have to be young for. Usually you wake up out of that, some sooner than others. you are dependent relationship. Okay, and the next set of conditions is the milieu. So there's like the conditions for being a baby, and the baby conditions. Then you need this milieu, the states of mind and that are managed within the house, within the family, within the activities and the ways of relating to people. That's the milieu. And the milieu creates the conditions for the drama to be played out, which is a kind of act. Act is playing an act. And of course, there wouldn't be a desire to play all this if humans weren't motivated by a more primal and fundamental urge to imitate knowing. So our soul is here to seek true knowing and master that, to know the self, to know and show the self. That's our goal that we seek through philosophy. But what is even more powerful than the soul's desire for its truth, excellence, and destiny is what we call an urge. The urge that kept us alive in caveman days. The urge to be like. Imitation. So the lowest. And when I talk about caveman days, I mean before we developed understanding and reflection. Likeness, imitation. To be like the leader. So, imitation, there is an urge to imitate, or what we call cosplay, or pretend, cosplay what it means to be a knower, which is a lot easier to do, because to actually gain knowing, you have to do the work of philosophy and midwifery. And that's not available to a lot of people as well, which is a factor we have to be aware of. Thankfully, we have the Orange Sutra that we're reading today, and the Balboa translation of Socrates, giving us what we need to master the logos and the pathologos. So, and of course, this is what politicians and scammers and marketers appeal to, this false hierarchy. You are better because you are white, or you are Christian, or you are a man. And this is what the predominant internet community is, the nature of the predominant internet community is at this stage. But also it's our society. The political figures all do the same thing. It's also capitalism. So this way of being ruled by the pathologos, which tries to appeal to people by telling them you are better simply because you have the appearance of what it means to be good or what it means to be knowing. And therefore you don't have to do anything, you don't have to do any self-reflection, you don't have to do any work, you don't have to sacrifice anything, you're just better because you're a rich white man. And by the way, wouldn't you like to genocide the brown people, or the Muslims, or the Palestinians, or the American Indians, or the Aboriginals, or the poor people, and yada, 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 yada. So that's where we are as a species and a society, online, in politics, and within our economic and legal systems as well. We know this. It's all about the people who are at the top, and they have to justify why they have all the things. We are innately better. Why? Because... Shut up. Because we have the appearance of knowing. We are cosplaying what it means to be better. So if you've ever seen Joe Rogan or any of a podcast with Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or any of those people, they are always trying to sound like they know things when they don't. They are cosplaying. So this is the dominant force behind human culture at this stage of our development. And our next stage is to evolve into awakening philosophy, or awakening the logos, which is what we're doing here. So good for you. All right. So the reason why it has an appeal is that urge to likeness, urge to get a new chair, the urge to imitation, to cosplay, the imitation of what it means to be knowing, is more appealing because it's more fundamental than our desire for truth. Which is why we have to practice the virtues, practice, the discipline and the nurturing and the training and the application of everything we learn in midwifery and philosophy. So that's a condition, that urge. We have the baby conditions, being dependent, believing in authority, giving the benefit of doubt to our parents, taking the blame when they act in an unjust way towards our good state of mind. That's also another quality, the good state of mind. These are all the conditions, the urge of the parental figures, the milieu, and then there's the act or the drama that plays out. And then there is the conditions of the drama, no logos, no words allowed, no questions. And these are all the conditions for the transmission. So now we are on the next stage, section 3, amnesia. What role does amnesia play in the getting of what causes all of our problems? Or all of our fundamental problems, of course. Let's jump in. Here we go. Amnesia. Our third concern, amnesia, is something that has to be done with our highlighter. Let's open our highlighter. Here we go. Highlighter is open. Our third concern, amnesia, is the hallmark of a problem. Wow, that's interesting to hear. There we go. What's the hallmark of a problem? Amnesia is the hallmark of a problem. It is a distinctive condition. So we need to really be looking out for amnesia in our lives. That's interesting. The struggle to resolve our problems is the struggle to restore the integrity of the past. Wow. Okay. Arranging my colors on my highlighting palette. Blue, green, purple, yellow, red, blue. The struggle, so we're in a struggle to resolve our problems, is the struggle to restore the integrity of the past. So we're going back to collect what we left behind. The recovery of our memory then, well, that's not the thing. The recovery of our memory then is the elimination of the pathologos. So now we're getting some clues on what it means to have completely eliminated and freed ourselves from the pathologos, which is exciting. Elimination of the pathologos. The degree to which our why is that? Okay. The degree to which our problems still dominate. Oops. The degree to which our problems still dominate is the measure of the remaining distortion of our past. What? Let's do that one. That one's better. Okay. The degree to which our problems still dominate is the measure of the remaining distortion of our past. So there's something distorting our seeing, our functioning in the present. And it's to do with the recovery of a memory. the partial understanding of the pathologos, so we've got partial understanding, is a partial recovery from our amnesia. So we always talk about this channel being a relationship, life being a relationship with the logos. That's the dialectic of being a human being. The lapse of time and the significance of that being, we need to continually to recover more and more of our memory. The lapse of time between this partial recovery and falling once again into a pathologos, amnesia, is the measure of our growth. So as we go on this journey, we will gain insights and we will forget. And then we'll learn again, go, oh, I can't believe I forgot that. I've seen that already. I can't believe I saw through that. I was free of that for a week or two. But I completely forgot. Back into my problem again. Goes all the way up. Some people have had spiritual experience or experiences of nous. Knowingness, nous in philosophy. Enlightenment or spiritual experiences, and give them a week or so and they forget. Even if it might have been the most profound experiences they've had their whole life. This is how powerful the pathologos is. It's more powerful even than enlightenment. The degree to which we gain insight into the pathologos shortens the period of time we are under its effect. So the greater the insight, the less time we spend being a slave to that insidious dialectic, that insidious analogy, that kakadaemon, the bad inner voice. That's interesting. So we can measure our growth by amnesia, and we can shorten the period of time under that amnesia and that slavery through deeper and deeper insights. So you better be pushing for the most highest, most personally meaningful goals in your life so that you can surface those deeper aspects of your pathologos, so you can gain deeper and deeper insights so that you can be free. So even if you don't care about understanding philosophy and understanding truth, you better be doing philosophy anyway if you're concerned about being free. Because the greater the insight, the greater the freedom. And the greater the more your goals are in line with mastering the logos in philosophy, the more able you are to surface that which you need to gain insight about at the deepest level. So the higher your goals, the deeper the pathologos. The deeper the ability of the pathologos, or the more stronger the pathologos, giving you what you need to gain better insight and greater freedom. So, what's the moral of that? Do philosophy. Amnesia serves the needs of the pathologos. What? You are serving badness. Because it disguises from us the true dynamics of these past learning situations. Once we impartially review these interpretations, all right, so the origin scene we were discussing earlier and the associated milieu, states of mind, and associated problems and beliefs that function as gears to support the pathologos, we forget those dynamics. We forget how the milieu and those problems and those beliefs all fit together. We forget the dynamics of that origin scene. We forget the implication it's had on our whole life. And it causes us to reinterpret. In our last philosophy podcast, we talked about how when we're reading this new way that we're learning to do, we're learning to read without interpretation. Very different from how we are taught to read at school. At school, we get told things like, what does this book mean to you? And you can make up anything. It's a very terrible way of teaching how to read. It's not reading at all. It's the opposite. It's interpretation. Because you can say, well, to me, Harry Potter was about... Oh, you probably wouldn't read Harry Potter at school. Maybe you would. To me, Macbeth was about cyberbullying and the culture of cyberbullying in our world. That's not in the text. But hey, if your teacher is really into cyberbullying or really interested in that as an idea, you're probably going to get an A. That's not reading. It's how we're taught to reinterpret or distort our seeing. So by reading the way that we're doing, the way that we read Socrates, and even the way we're reading this, we are learning a new kind of reading where every word matters, which is why everything's highlighted pretty much. Every word matters, and we're trying to never leave out any words, but also never add in what isn't there. That's reading. So the distortions come when we interpret. We add what's not there, or we leave out what is. So reading in this way is also a kind of yoga, because ultimately enlightenment is seeing the truth, seeing what is, the truth of self and reality. So what's our distortion? What is false about self and reality? Formally, what's the name of a false belief about self and reality that distorts your perception, causes interpretation, or what we call projections? Project? Well, the name for that is pathologos, the false belief about self and reality. So by reading, we're practicing a kind of yoga to see what's there, which is pretty interesting. Because here we are reading what causes our interpretations, what's the nature of our interpretations, our projections, and our distortions. Part of it is amnesia. Once we impartially review these interpretations, they fall by themselves. Interesting. Sorry, once we impartially, so there's our without interpretation, the word impartially. Once we do it objectively or without distortion or without prejudice or loyalty to false beliefs, once we impartially review them, they fall by themselves. So that's interesting. So all we got to do is see and read. The falling will happen on its own, which is neat. That's pretty cool to see. To have a heavily interpreted past is to live in the shadows of the pathologos belief. Oh. Wow, an interesting way of saying it. So we're not only projecting or interpreting our present and our reading, we also have that false interpretation of our past, which causes of course, that's the cause, because that's the greater side of the analogy, right? The past is the greater, and everything we live in the present is a reflection of that. It's the lesser. So there's that false analogy we're carrying. That false dialectic, the relationship between two things, the greater and the lesser. Our lives being a lesser, where we try and interpret things according to the greater, the pathologos. So that has an influence so long as we don't understand what's going on and we don't remember our understanding of what's going on. To have a heavily interpreted past is to live in the shadows of pathologos belief. And as long as we reside in that realm, what are we residing in? The shadow realm.
Wow. I don't want to eat a monkey.
We're residing in the shadow realm. That's funny. Because Yu-Gi-Oh! That's a term from a cartoon and card game called Yu-Gi-Oh! The shadow realm. There's also a trope in a lot of anime as well. So it's a meme. Okay, so to have a heavily interpreted past is to live in the shadows of pathologos belief, and as long as we reside in that realm, the shadow realm, we forget ourselves. Wow, so what we are really recovering is a memory of ourselves. That's interesting. Very similar to what we see in the Phaedo. And of course, you can check out our Phaedo series on YouTube. The situation or event in which we accepted the pathologos contains the onset of our amnesia. Wow, that's where we got it. That's where it started. The situation or event. What we call the origin scene. That's when when we accept the pathologos, we take one in, and what do we sacrifice? Our memory of self, which is interesting because we've seen already in our reading the things that we sacrifice to accept: the false belief, the role within the family, the kind of acceptance within the family, whatever rewards you are given, and whatever removal of punishments you are given for towing the line, a way of being within the family, a mask through which you're allowed to express yourselves within that dynamic. That's what we gain. But what do we sacrifice? Well, we sacrifice our own experience. Everything I saw must be wrong. And of course, a doubt of your own ability to trust your experience that remains your whole life, that functions to block you. So you sacrifice your self-experience. You sacrifice your self-understanding and learning. You sacrifice your self-goals to be a slave to them. You sacrifice internal reflection for practical activities. Usually practical things are less likely to challenge false beliefs, because to challenge false beliefs you have to reflect. That's ousia. You sacrifice self-ousia. Do chores, help others. What about you? Help others means be a slave to others. Now, of course, we're reading the Meno, and Socrates makes a point. Hey, by the way, I am following the logos for my benefit primarily. Secondarily, I help others because the truth has that effect. It's naturally necessary, true, and beautiful. But I don't do it to convince others. That's what charlatans and con artists do. They're motivated by convincing others. That's their whole game. That's Trump. Lie, convince others. That's religion. Convince others of the belief that you have. I'm not doing that. I'm interested in my self goal, to follow the self logos for my self development. And by the way, that's the only way you can really help others. But that's secondary. So we sacrifice our self-experience, our self-reflection, our self-ousia, our self-understanding, our self-learning, our self-goals. All of the high words attached to the self. Which is interesting here because we're seeing that we also fundamentally forget the self, ourselves. We forget ourselves. So the word self could incorporate all of those. So that's what we sacrifice for accepting the pathologos, taking the blame for the injustice, not speaking up, giving the benefit of doubt to these bad faith actors. And of course, this is something that we might notice we play out in the rest of our life. People who put on that kind of act, that kind of a scammer, we often fall prey to. It's no coincidence that Russia has its Putin, Germany has its Hitler, America has its Trump. It's that style of liar that people fall for. That's common to the pathologos, that's common in the society. So you might find yourself, when it's that kind of person, the person who talks to me in that way, then I kind of lose myself and I forget myself, or I forget my goals, or I suck up, or I become a slave, or I give away too much, or I speak too much, but then later on I'm kicking myself. Or I take the blame, think they're better than they are. I buy into their bullcrap. So this is the continual playing out of the pathologos that happens because we've forgotten that we've already seen through this. Or we forget whatever insights we come to. That's the amnesia. And that amnesia comes all the way back to forgetting all of those things we mentioned when we accepted the pathologos. That's the onset of our amnesia. We forget it was our decision. So all of those conditions the nature and the conditions that we've been talking about are all to set us up for us to make the conclusion. Now we're set up, of course, and we're not blaming ourselves. It's not a blame game, because of course it would be devastating to a child, and it's rare for a child to have that level of understanding, maturity, courage, and commitment to challenge the pathologos as a baby. So we're not blaming ourselves, but it was our decision to accept an interpretation that binds us. We could have said, no, this is bollocks, you guys are lying, and I reject it because it's unjust or unfair. In whatever way a small kid would say that. Which means if you want to be a good parent or a good coach or a good teacher, encourage that kind of talking. It'll be a challenge, but it's also the best thing you can do. So we forget that it was our decision to accept an interpretation that binds us, but we did accept it. We are responsible for our own condition. What's that mean? Well, we said one of the conditions for the pathologos is to believe in authority. And one of the conditions of accepting the pathologos within the family is you are bound by authority. Your goals are dependent on what authority deems. When you're a kid, if you want to go to the park, you need your authority figures. You need mum and dad to say that it's okay. But as an adult, you have to realize, hang on a second, it's not the case. We can do our complete self-development of our soul in this lifetime ourselves, even if no one else wants to play. Now, hopefully they do, which is why I started this channel, and why you can follow along on Twitch and YouTube for free, and you can join the Discord. Hopefully other people pick up on it, but it's not needed. You are responsible for your condition. You made the choice, which also means you have the power to free yourself. Not blaming, it's a good thing to realize this. 2, to unravel that moment of the decision and to discover its enduring significance upon us is the task of the dialectic. Hooray!
Wow. Wow. What? Wow. Wow. What?
We found our magic word that we've been seeking this whole time. The dialectic. The thing that we are seeing Socrates point to time and time again in the Parmenides that we read the introduction of. The key is the dialectic. In the Phaedo, the key is how do you read? Well, with this level of care, but also repeating it, reviewing it a lot, talking about it a lot. That's philomethesis. But also, how do you read philosophically? Apply the dialectic wherever you can. That's the self-study of the exercise of philosophy. The dialectic. What has Socrates been laying out to Meno in our reading of the Meno? The dialectic. What's been our hypothesis we're carrying? It's the same dialectic or paradigm that you can apply to what's true, philosophy, and what's false, midwifery. And finally, we have the word. We're only 33 pages in. The dialectic. So, let's give it some lines around here. So, here we go. Okay, it's taking a bit of time to make this highlighting of this keyword font stick out. So we found the word that we've been looking for. Only because we have been able to generate a question because of that principle, because what's true of what's true also is reflected in its shadow or its distortion. Those are two words we've seen here. we have been thinking, hang on a second, if that's true, if philosophy is about the dialectic fundamentally, then could what's false, or what's freeing ourselves from what's false, or if philosophy is the perfection, and that's tied to the dialectic perfection of our soul, could our purification, the other thing Socrates says we have to do, could that also be tied to the dialectic? So that's been our hypothesis. And here it is. We see it finally. So we're very happy. So we're giving it all these green happy lines. So I'm just taking some time to make it pretty. There we go. The moment of the decision. To unravel that moment of the decision and to discover its enduring significance upon us is the task of this dialectic. Whoops. Hooray. There we go. Dialectic. Was it worth it? I don't know. But also we can point to some other key words that we've been using, because these words really these are key words that really, capture the nature of the pathologos. Shadow. It's a shadow. Which is interesting because we often talk about the logos ladder going up. Might as well draw it out again. The logos ladder going up, which has this rail, which we call understanding. And dianoia, which is understanding the realm of being. And it has this rail of the ladder, which is states of mind. Or vision, or experience, or nous. And we have these levels or rungs of the ladder we climb. That's the logos. To reach the nature of self and reality or being. But we talk about how it casts a dirty shadow. That looks, and a shadow of a ladder is two-dimensional. It doesn't go up, it's stagnant. And it looks more like railway tracks. And so what we're learning is, well, that's the logos, this is the pathologos. Well, this reaches a seeing, a knowing, an identification, and acting through self and reality. This does the same thing to a false belief of self and reality. And so we have those ideas of purification or perfection. Purification leads to our destiny. Perfection, sorry. And this is our fate. And our hypothesis, well, if one's a reflection of the other, then dialectic can apply to both. So that's why we are happy when we finally see the word in the Orange Book, the word that's come up so often, which allows us to create analogies. Everything that we see in philosophy, we can create an analogy. Oh, how can we create a question about its equivalent in the pathologos, in midwifery? Or an insight. For example, we said, there's a kind of initiation into the family way of being based on the image of beauty and knowing in our pathologos. That's just given me an insight about what it is opposite. There is a kind of spiritual initiation based on not the image, but the truth of knowingness, truth and reality. Now I have gained an insight. By the way, that's exactly what we've been reading in the Meno. Socrates says, Meno, you're stuck because your education hasn't involved this initiation. You've been stuck in the physical world. You think education is about how to rip people off, how to sound smart while you get money. That's not an education. Education is a preparation of the soul to experience truth, which is a kind of spiritual initiation into the true nature of reality and beauty and truth. Just like over here, only this is the imitation. So this is pretty cool that it's the same art of the dialectic applied to both, and you can use insights on one to gain questions or insights on the other. And of course, we know when we have insights that are meaningful in that way, we can anticipate the counterattack. But because we understand it, we can expect it, and we can smile and continue to practice the dialectic even to those counterattacks. But keep in mind that they come up to try and knock you off this ladder and bring you back down to here, because this is based on love. This is what it means to be loving. This is what it means to be a member of the family. This is what lovely mummy and lovely daddy are doing, and all our lovely relatives and all the people that we are familiar with in society. Yes, come back down here. That's the counterattack. Don't go far beyond them to reach your truth and destiny. That's what they tell you. Of course, you should do it. It's your purpose. And of course, if you find that offensive, I don't mean your family or your religion or your culture or your milieu. I mean the guy next door. Surely you don't think that the guy next door's the man and the husband and wife next door is all knowing and wise and caring? Of course not. You probably see them doing things that make you shake your head often. Probably think they're jerks maybe sometimes. Or maybe not the next door neighbors. Maybe they're nice. Maybe the guy up the street. Their kids don't think that, by the way. So I'm talking about them, not you. If you're taking it personally, or the cultures overseas, or anyone not in your group. If you're taking it personally. If you're not taking it personally, good for you. You have an opportunity to free yourself from what's binding you to your problems. So good for you. So that's interesting that this has been our model that we are using to understand the destiny and the purpose of us human beings, what we're here for. So it's like, if to use the analogy of video games, if you're in the game anyway, you've spawned here as a human being. Isn't being rational to understand what the goal is and how to get there and how to overcome the challenges you have to getting there? Wouldn't that be a rational way of approaching every single video game you've ever played? Then, why not this life? There is no why not. It is rational. The only thing stopping you from being rational is that which defends the irrational, or the pathologos. But that's part of the game. Wouldn't be much of a game if you didn't have enemies to overcome. So this model is quite a handy tool. In fact, let's give this shadow a different color, because it kind of looks like. Let's give this a different color. let's give it no. Okay, whoops. Didn't like that because that's the same color as there. Right, let's just make it. Oh, that's fine. So, neat. Shadow. So shadow is what we saw in the text. It's the shadows. And the other word was, I think it was distortion. What did he say? Yes, distortion. Here's another key word. Let's make another underline. Key distortion. So the pathologos, see, these are some awesome keywords that we can use to remember and understand the nature of our problems. It's a distortion. Of course, amnesia is one too. We could put underline under there. Fundamental forgettingness of the self. Amnesia, distortion, shadow. And we solve it with the dialectic. To unravel that moment of the decision. What decision? The decision that we made to accept an interpretation. It's not false. It's not true, by the way. It's an interpretation. What's interpretation mean? Taking away what is there, adding what is. So what do we take away? All of the crappy injustice they're doing. We ignore that. What are we adding? That we are at fault. We take the blame. We add a benefit of the doubt. So that's all interpretation. So we accepted an interpretation that binds us. We did accept it. We are responsible for our own condition, which is a good thing. Not a blame game, it's a good thing. To unravel that moment of our decision doesn't require them to be on board. You don't have to convince them. They're not going to be convinced. Why would they? This takes work. This takes effort. This takes discipline. This takes a rare kind of quality of character. Very rare. Of all of the billions of people on the planet, how many people know about this? A few hundred? How many people value it? Half that. How many people have done midwifery? How many people have read the book? Half that. How many people have not only read the book but have done philosophical midwifery? Half that. How many people continue to do it? Half that. How many people do it even when they are certain that they're right about something? The number has become very small. So, if you're in this, you're as Pierre Grimes might say, a rare bird. Which is important to recognize. So to expect these authority figures who are far more entrenched, who are far less rare, who haven't gone through whatever it is that you have gone through to lead you to this, it's not rational. That's okay. You don't need them to come along. That belief that your goals and your survival was dependent on accepting this belief from your authorities was a childhood thing. You made the decision. You can free yourself from it. And that unraveling that moment of the decision and discovering the significance, why we unravel it, why we sacrifice what's false, that's the task of the dialectic. And we love the dialectic. But what basic need does amnesia serve as it disguises the dynamics of our past learning? It's an interesting way of understanding blocks and problems. You can say, well, even the pathologos served a kind of need because of where we were as babies. So you can say our problems are solutions that no longer apply. So with that in mind, we're asking, well, Where's my green? Here we go. Oh, I see. I want... Okay, just fixing my highlighter over here. So what basic need does amnesia serve as it disguises the dynamics of our past learning? For it blocks recollection of similar events. It obscures our reflections by limiting our focus to the particular situation in front of us. So part of the reason we don't discover it's a problem is we haven't discovered it's a pattern. That's why we often talk about pulling out the key terms. When we read, we pull out the key terms. When we read Plato, we always read the Balboa because we can see the Greek. We can see a whole collection of key terms. Oh, he's using the word logos a lot there. He's using the word benefit a lot there. I wonder if there's a significance of this repetition, of this certain theme. So too, pull out the key states of mind, words, and problems that we face in our life, so that we can establish a pattern. One of the roles of amnesia is to block you from remembering you've done this before. You've felt this way before. You've told yourself this before. You might have even seen through it before. So you don't recognize it's a pattern, a part of a cycle. And if it's a pattern, part of a cycle, it's understandable. And you can trace it back to its first cause. And as we are seeing here, if you apply the dialectic to it, you can gain an understanding that will allow you to free yourself from it. Freedom!
I don't want to eat a monkey. Wow.
So, why do we have this amnesia? Because it disguises those dynamics. It disguises and obscures from us the fact. It obscures our reflection, so our reflection on ourselves, by limiting our focus to the particular situation in front of us. It's a one-time problem, when it's not really. It's a repeating thing. There are some early memories that may present the subject. Oh, I don't like this color. There are some early memories that may present the subject with possible molestation scenes or sexual encounters with authorities. But what we discover through our midwifery is that these encounters, whether real or imaginary, are extreme forms of what lies potentially in a pathologos. These types of encounters can be seen as the most dramatic form of a pathologos. And so they become symbolic and become symbolically played out on numerous occasions with the subject through a variety of signs. These events gain status and importance because of the level of intensity. Because the level of intensity increases, bringing the subject to focus on the particular situation that confronts them. It's very intense, bringing yourself into what's happening in the moment, very dramatic. However, while it may be important for the subject to know whether or not the event took place, it is not for the philosophical midwife. So it's not important for the philosophical midwife whether or not it takes place. This is important to point to because this is a big thing in psychotherapy. We are human beings, and this is part of the nature of being human beings. And one way of playing out the pathologos with intensity, and one of the questions is, well, could it be imagined? Did it really happen? It's not for the midwife to know whether or not it took place, for it is not it might be important for the subject to know whether or not it took place, but not for the midwife, because it is the symbolic manifestation of the problem. The symbology of the pathologos may include the dynamics of sexuality, the seduction, fondling, the intimate embracing, and the like. And it is the meaning. Let's give this a different color. It is the meaning. The meaning of such events as these. It's the meanings of such events as these that is the task to discover. Similar to philosophy. It's not just about enlightenment experiences. It's not about any experience. Again, with the enlightenment in philosophy, or the dramatic aspects or playings out of the pathologos. It's not so much the experience, but rather the meaning that we attach to it, the meaning we take away from it, which is why logos is so important. How many people have had this or that enlightenment experience, or near-death experience, or flow state experience, or so on and so on and so on. Many, 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 many people. And why are we not all enlightened? Why do we still have our problems, individually and as a species? Because it's the meaning we associate with it. It's the meaning we take away. Just like the dramatic scene we've seen in the pathologos. We walk away with an unspoken, unsuspected, false belief that takes the blame. It's the conclusion. And all of the conditions for the pathologos were to set us up. The milieu, the way the problems in the family, the way that people talk in the family, the states of mind in the family, these are all things that don't make sense. They are irrational and unjust. On purpose, so that we try to make sense of it. How can this be the case? I thought these people were great. They're brilliant. I'm a baby. They're everything to me. We need to try and make sense of what's confusing, which is exactly how we read. We look for puzzles. It's how video games work. It's how detective novels work. It's how the hero's journey works. We look for things that stand out that need to be solved because we're here to learn something. We need to solve the puzzles. The only thing with the pathologos is they're fake puzzles. So we need to make sense of it. That's so all of those fake conditions were set up so that you make sense of all of these fake puzzles in a way that you can only do so, you can do so in two ways. Reject it all as an act and unjust, or take the blame and walk away with this false belief about yourself, blaming yourself and blaming reality. It's a way of making sense of it. It's not the experience itself, it's how we make sense of it. Same thing with enlightenment experiences. That's why our method is the dialectic. The dialectic is the paradigm of spirituality because, for many reasons, but one of them is you are developing a way of understanding that brings you to the experience, and when you're in there, you can make sense of it. And then reflect back on it when you come back into your body. And then go into it with greater depth. And then maybe even go beyond it. The significance of understanding. And by the way, you're doing it anyway. Only you are doing it as a slave when you make sense of it with the pathologos, or you're doing it as a master, gaining mastery, if you make sense of your experiences through the logos and dialectic. Sounds simple when you say it, but it took us work to get here. The philosophical midwife is the midwife is not concerned with whether or not the event was real or imagined, fact or fantasy, but what is indeed fundamental to philosophical midwifery is assisting in the process of discovering the meaning of what is being presented by the subject. A wide range of sexual nuances are all expressions of the pathologos, because they are nothing other than ways of fixing roles, of establishing positions of power, and ways of domination, which are themselves ways of avoiding mature challenges. So, establishing all of these things that are part of the establishing of the pathologos, the roles, who's in power, who's a slave. Your destiny is not your own. You have to be a slave to somebody else. You have to give up your self-goals, your self-experience. You have to take the blame. All this crap. It's bullshit. But also part of it is silencing the logos, making sure you don't speak up, or you feel like you can't speak up, but you can. You don't challenge it as unjust. And all of the threats and the antagonism and the physical threats or the exile threats or the mocking or the humiliation, everything that's involved around keeping one of us. So fixing roles, establishing power, domination, but also ways of avoiding mature challenges, questions, and the logos. It is through these devices that homosexuality and other expressions of the pathologos are communicated. It is the same with any identification with a belief. If you identify with a belief, whatever the belief is, they're all forms of fundamentalism. Now, everything we've been saying up until this point, it's challenging for a lot of people, I suppose, but I suspect for a lot of people who are into this game, they have the maturity and the integrity to reflect on themselves and go, yeah, I mean, it's easy to see with those other cultures, but I can't say I'm any different. That's literally what those crazy other cultures say. And the same thing with the families up the street. They're mental, but they don't think it. So clearly I'm no different. I doubt people would have that kind of, have gone this far in this series without that kind of rationality and integrity and maturity. But here it starts to be a bit challenging because of the nature of the milieu of our society currently. Identification with a belief. Isn't that the political football that is kicked around by con artists and grifters that we call politicians to distract us from the actual cause of problems within our society? The pathologos, capitalism, wealth inequality, these systems of domination and establishing fixed roles. You're a working class, we're the political class, we're the rich class. Laws for you, not for us. That's the roles. That's the positions of power. That's how we dominate, through money and weapons and laws. Same thing within society, right? How do they distract us from rationally addressing the cause of those problems and actually learning and maybe actually saving our species from extinction? Maybe actually putting an end to all this stupid, unnecessary suffering? They kick around political footballs. I remember when I was young, it was, and it's interesting because they taught debate at school. We didn't learn dialectic. And part of the thing with debate is, let's just give the kids a topic that's meaningless. Should we change our national anthem? Should we change our national flag? There's no point to that. There's no conclusion, so you can learn to debate. I'm pro, and they tell you your opinion. You're going to be pro changing the anthem. You're going to be against changing the anthem. What the heck does that mean? You're telling me my position? That's crazy. Oh no, that's what it means to be a thinker. That's debate class. Notice, your position doesn't matter and the results doesn't matter. Therefore, the conclusion doesn't matter. There's no point. Who cares? We call that a political football. And politicians say, oh, by the way, you're starting to question the banking system or capitalism or how the military is used to establish roles and domination, which are all unjust. Well, hang on a second. What about with changing the flag? That's a political football we can kick around that's completely meaningless. Now today, it's through what we call identity politics. What belief do you identify with? Are you a MAGA? Are you a liberal? Are you a LGBTQ? Are you a furry? Who cares? We're here to remove our false identifications, not become entrenched in them. So we can actually be free to discover the truth about ourselves. We can't pretend that we just know because I like these opinions. I feel like I'm a Protestant. That's me. I'm Protestant. I was born a Protestant. I'll die a Protestant. I came into this world as a Protestant, and I'm going to Protestant heaven. What makes you think that? I don't know. Just familiar. It's garbage. Doesn't happen anywhere else. A doctor. I feel like I should make the incision to do the heart transplant below the blockage. What? Wait, have you done research and understanding and verified it's true where you should make the incision? No. I just, it's my belief. Isn't it just as true as anyone else's belief? Go to jail, lose your medical license. You can't do that in anything else. But it's, in the time of the recording, identification politics. What do you identify with? Is just a political football that has no consequence, has no meaning, is to distract us from following the logos. Who's getting the money? Why? How do we understand the cause of our problems? How do we set up laws and institutions to address them? Midwifery, what we're learning here. And how do we get better? How do we establish true education? Philosophy. And how do we rationally and maturely share all technology and resources to meet all human needs with the least amount of work in a renewable, efficient manner so that we are free to do those two things we're here to do? It's being a rational species. So here we are seeing that any identification with the belief is a kind of fundamentalism. Notice when you say, well, I am a Protestant, you're not saying, I like some of the Protestant beliefs. You're saying, I am, that is what I am. So if someone comes along and says, actually, if you read the text, you'll see that these Protestant beliefs are false. The rational reaction is, oh, thank goodness. I was carrying around something false that can cause harm to myself and others. Thank you for helping me see something that I was, just like when you go to school. If you want to be a pilot, the belief that planes fly because every time a plane takes off, you have to summon a swarm of ducks, and they go under the wings and then they flap, and that's what makes the plane go off the ground. Well, you can't actually become a pilot if you believe that. It's because it's false. You learned it as a little baby. It was a fairy tale you read, from your parents read to you. It's not true. It actually is because of wind pressure and the shape of the wings. Oh, thank you. Now I can reach my goal of becoming a pilot. The difference is the many ducks theory of aviation isn't just a belief I have. It's who I am. I'm a many duckist. My dad was a many duckist. His dad was a many duckist. We're from a proud lineage of many duckists. And we hate those many, the many goose people who think that planes fly by having lots of geese. No, don't they realize that geese can't fly at those altitudes? Those idiots. And they never change their mind. That's why we must kill them all. For us, many duck families are the right ones. We are the chosen ones. You know what? God told us that the many ducks theories of plane flight is the true one. That's fundamentalism, to be identified with the self-belief. And that's what we saw too in the previous section. If we are living a dialectic to reach the true nature of the self, which is our remembering of our true identity, if we're not in that game, we can be playing out the dialectic to become entrenched in our pathologos idea of the self. So the successive refinements of the image of the self becoming your mask. Us duckists, we every time we take a photo, we do a duck face, which makes us look more beautiful, which is proof that we are chosen by God. It's my mask. And whenever we say hello, we say whack, 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 whack. And that's who I am. It's my persona. I like to be a duckist. This is how I relate to myself. And eventually I am identified with it. That's the fundamentalism. And that's the political football kicked around today. Are you a furry? Is that who you are? Is that your identity? Oh, but the people who don't like fairies, oh. Why not sacrifice false beliefs for truth? Gives you a role, gives you a way of expressing yourself, maybe gives you a community, all of those things that bind you to your problems. Anyway, so these kinds of homosexuality and other expressions of the pathologos are communicated. It is with the same with any identification with a belief. They are all forms of fundamentalism. And again, as we say often and often, if this one touches a nerve with you, keep an open mind, make it a question, or imagine it's the geese people. It's easy to see in others. While some may be led to seek some justification for the manifestation of the belief, justify it in some way. The many duck people, well, God chose us. I found a secret text under a rock. Did you know that? So while some seek justification for the manifestation of the belief, the pathologos, others may struggle against it, such as happens with homosexuality. But the more pertinent issue is to discover how one came to identify with, okay? So instead of like debating people of their opinions or their justification, that never goes anywhere. That's why it's a political football. It's just opinions versus opinions. There's no standard of truth. We're interested in understanding. So instead of going down that road of distraction and argument for argument's sake, which might be part of the identity, right? One of the things with evangelists or certain class of Christianity, like Mormonism, they send like children out knocking door to door to act like they know more about self and reality than you. Hey, I'm just a 17-year-old kid in a suit on a bike. Can I tell you the truth about self and reality? Oh, that's so stupid. That's so arrogant and patronizing and ridiculous. But them arguing against you gives them a feeling that they can associate with their identity. This is what it means to be a Mormon. Or whatever religion that does this. So they like to fight. That's part of the game, because beliefs don't have a feeling. It's a belief. Now, dianoia can be confirmed in direct experience of nous. That's why we're interested in understanding dianoia. It leads to direct experience of what's true, enlightenment, bliss, the isles of the blessed, to use Socrates' term. Beliefs don't. Doesn't go anywhere. So how come everyone has their own different beliefs and they're all wrong? They're all crazy. They're all at least 99.99999% of them are wrong. Maybe there's that one person who happens to have the right ones, but understanding doesn't fall into that trap. You can just understand. It's maturity. So what? So don't argue beliefs with beliefs. Do midwifery, which is an invitation to a higher, more mature level of reflection where you gain understanding. So instead of justifying the manifestation of your beliefs, which is just the pathologos, or struggling against it, the more pertinent issue is to discover how one became to identify with the particular manifestations of one's problem in the first place. Why do you think that you are a duckist? Why do you think that you are no good, or you're a slave, or you can never reach your goals? You're identified with this. Now if someone says, oh, I could never make it big in my goals. Well, that's not true. No, let me give you all my justifications while I know that I'm rubbish. I'm identified with the rubbish. I'm a rubbish person. Well, instead of listening to your justifications, like when you go down the street, sometimes you'll see those evangelists or Bible thumpers. This is what I believe. You go, hang on a second, why? Ah, good. I can give you all my justifications for my particular religion. Who cares? Better question is, well, how did you come to identify with it? What made you pick Protestant over Anglican? Or over Norse mythology? Why did you pick this one? Why did you go Thor over Zeus? All right, so how did you become everyone's got pathologos. So anyone saying, no, my beliefs from being a baby are the right ones, grow up. Their question is how you came to identify with your particular manifestation of your problem in the first place. That's the question. The question still remains, did these events take place? If the subject talks about it as real, then the midwife explores the issue as if it were. Real. But how important is it for the subject to determine? So how important is it for the subject to determine if the event took place? Clearly, it is likely to be very important to the subject, and it is only the subject that can pronounce judgment on the issue. However, before that issue can be resolved, the problem of blame and anger, big one, needs to be seriously addressed. Philosophical midwifery has only one way of dealing with issues and requires nothing else, because the real issue is to discover how we came to the conclusions we did. So we're seeing, hey, if they're talking about it as real, then we address it as though it's real. If we can't tell them it was fake, it doesn't help anything. And in many cases, it can be lying or gaslighting. It's up to them to pronounce judgment on it. But we are interested in how we came to the conclusions. We have to address the problem of blame and anger as well. Midwifery reviews and questions conclusions, not behavior. This is not behaviorism. This is not a physical psychotherapy. So at the time of recording, we are going through the transition from because psychotherapy as a model, or doesn't have a model yet, as a study is very new, a couple hundred years old, and it starts as, well, within mainstream modern European culture, it's new. Of course, philosophical midwifery was around in Socrates' day, the paradigm of understanding problems. But the way that psychotherapy is taught currently is physical, because that's the level of ignorance we are at a society where we've rejected the logos in Socrates to have a physical model of reality. Very easy, very good, because physical, you can stop people from questioning oppression. Because to question oppression is to point to principles and to reflect, which isn't physical. Or to fight a war, which is physical, and they have all the weapons. So what? So the physical model for understanding problems is called behaviorism. or its various forms, cognitive behavioral or rational emotive behavioral, all that sort of stuff. We're not interested in that. We don't treat people like dogs. You do something good, have a cookie. Physical behavior good, pat on their head. We realize we have minds, and the cause of our problems are our minds, or specifically, the conclusions we came to in our minds with our minds. Are they true conclusions that we are learning to make through learning how to read in philosophy? That will lead us through understanding to truth and reality, to our purpose, our destiny, to know and show the self? Or are they false conclusions, what we call false beliefs or pathologos, that we address in midwifery? So that's what we're addressing. It's not up to us to say whether or not it did happen. We're not talking about the physical experience or the physical behavior. We're talking about the mind conclusions. How do we make sense of it? Is it a true thing to make sense of? Should we be identified with false beliefs? Why are we identified with a particular manifestation of our particular pathologos? It's very different. And of course, time of the recording, all of the new work or the changes or the developments happening within the field are more or less this, taking bits and pieces of this, which is interesting. Because of course it is. If this is the paradigm, things are going to have more or less success based on how more or less it picks up on the paradigm. So obviously it's the case. But we are seeing, hopefully, something optimistic. We're moving away from behavioralism, a physical view of reality, to realize, oh no, we're not just mindless robots. We have consciousness. It's a problem of beliefs and understanding. So you don't have to murder everyone if they act the way you don't like. You don't have to put people in prison cells because that just addresses behavior. Put you in a prison cell. Which is, again, understood to not be helpful, but it serves oppression because, a lot of people make money off slave labor from prisoners. Which is a terrible problem that should be being addressed right now. And there are people getting paid a lot of money, called politicians, whose job it should be to address that problem. To lie about actually benefiting people in order to extract wealth from them by removing their rights, by calling them prisoners or evil people or bad people or criminals because of their behavior, and supposedly addressing their bad behavior by exploiting them through capitalism and slavery. They're getting paid to address that problem, and they're not. Well, how are we not looking at it? Identity politics. Should we change the flag? Well, hang on a second. What about slave labor? What about the prison industrial complex? What about the fact that all of these methods in our legal institutions and our educational institutions do not help anything, do not address the cause of problems, they just address the behavior. And they don't even address the behavior well. They use it as an excuse to act out your pathologos. Or I caught you doing something bad. Now I get to play out my pathologos and torture you or punish you or exploit you or dominate you because you're a naughty boy. Right now, there's a time of recording, there's a genocide happening. Or they have behavior we don't like. Let's not address the root causes of those behavior. Let's just use it as an excuse to do what we want. Yes, murder the people different from us, which is exactly their pathologos. Well, if that's what's happening, and it would require a mature, rational reflection on the cause of that behavior, why isn't it happening? Tangents, distractions. What causes that? The pathologos. So it's circular in a kind of a way. We need midwifery to address the things that distract us, including identification with beliefs, which is fundamentalism. It's not a surprise that the people who are doing the genocide right now against the Palestinians are fundamentalists. It's the case for any identification with a belief. You're here to find out what you really are. why become identified with a false belief? Because it's... Anyway. I talk about it in this way because it's just strange to me. But it's only strange to me because I've been reading this book and engaged in this kind of relationship with the logos and dialectic for a long time. So once you see it, it's obvious. And sometimes it can be sad to see the implications of not having awoken to the logos, to the significance of the logos and pathologos. It can be frustrating when you can see how easy it would be just to correct the ship. But of course it isn't that easy. We're human beings. If it was that easy, there'd be no such thing as a block. We would simply be walking that logos bridge, which includes the pathologos and the logos to reach our goal. But then this thing wouldn't be much of a block if it didn't block us from seeing what's simple and obvious. What's that called? Reading. Seeing what's there, simply and obviously. Which is what? To see what's there without distortion or interpretation. So, sometimes I talk in that way about what we could be doing as a species. Especially when current events at the time of recording are happening. So, it's an interesting thing. We're learning about what it means to be a midwife. We're not interested in behavior, we're interested in reviewing and questioning conclusions. And at the time of the recording, we're also reading the Meno, which is very interesting because Socrates is spending a lot of time and effort encouraging Meno to reflect on his beliefs, his conclusions about what virtue is. And Meno wants to talk about his behavior. What's virtue? Oh, it's doing these things in your behavior. It's getting gold and silver. It's managing a city, and for a woman, it's managing a house. It's doing harmful behavior to people you deem your enemies. Oh, and getting away from such behavior yourself. Very behaviorism, very physical, materialist idea that Meno is in. But of course, Socrates is pointing to the fact that that's not reality. Our physical world is a kind of shadow of reality, in the same way our pathologos is a kind of shadow cast on us of the truth. Oh, sorry, when I say shadow, I don't mean, so the physical world is an actual reflection through different dimensions from higher realms like being. The pathologos we saw is a kind of distortion shadow. That's the difference. It's a distortion. So we are, as Socrates is doing as well, which is where we get the name philosophical midwifery, looking at reviewing and questioning conclusions, not behavior. Is that interesting? I think so.
Wow.
In the transmission of the pathologos, as we have said, authorities are only dimly aware that they seek their own benefit. We talked about this. Hey, you're pursuing your self goals? Stop doing that. Do chores for me. That kind of thing. You are becoming greater than me. You're stepping outside of my glass ceiling. Whoa, I don't like that. That's not going to help. How does that help me? They're only dimly aware that they're seeking their own benefit, and they find it difficult to acknowledge that they do what they do for themselves. So we don't like using the words selfish and selfless because it gives the idea that pursuing your self goals is bad, which it isn't. So we like self-full or self-empty. And this is a kind of, if there was such a word as selfish, it's this: to pursue not the self, but the pathologos self, at the expense of the other person seeking their true benefit. So they are really self-empty. This is a self-empty thing to do. They give the appearance of being confident knowers, very much like Meno. Check out Meno, our reading of the Meno. So appearance, right? To ensure their success, they design, okay, this is the act, this is all of the orchestration. They design, see, that's not very nice color green. Green, yellow, blue, yeah, there aren't that many primary colors. I want a different color green though. Maybe halfway. Try that one. There are only so many primary colors. So to ensure their success, they design situations or take advantage of situations that develop in which the subject is made to feel dependent and powerless. You can't do it, you need me. So we talk a lot about this idea of anybody who tries to keep you at the level of belief is a grifter. So if you're an apprentice mechanic and you're a master mechanic, you asked him, hey, by the way, why does this thing go here? And he said, oh, just believe me. You can't become a mechanic yourself. You will always be dependent on him. It's a con that's based fundamentally in an expression of his pathologos. Anything. You can't, every time, if you want to become a mechanic yourself, then if someone comes in with a broken gasket and you haven't developed an understanding of where it goes, you have to run to that mechanic and give him money and take his advice. And if he wants to destroy your business, he'll give you bad advice, bad beliefs. You're a slave. Same thing with all religions. Oh, just believe me. Why don't I understand it for yourself? Grifters. Politicians, hope and belief. Hope for change. Just believe me. Surely. But politicians are always lying. Yeah, forget about that. Just believe me anyway. All of this are just manifestations of our own individual pathologos on various different stages in society. So, take advantage of situations for themselves at the expense of others. Did we mention politicians? Did we mention cult leaders and religious leaders? Do we mention businessmen? Isn't that the entirety of capitalism? To try and take advantage of situations for your own personal profit? Isn't that the game? And then somehow wealth will trickle down, says those liars, politicians who make the laws. Anyway, it's pathologos all the way up. Or rather all the way down, because our soul is more important. Okay, so take advantage. So where the subject is made to feel dependent and powerless, to oppose the imposition of the authority's will. To secure their ends, such authorities will use their skill of persuasion, both with and without words. So a few episodes ago, we looked at the description of the tyrannical state of being in the Republic, and we asked the question, does this match the worst state of man, or the tyrannical type of person within the soul? Not literal tyranny. Does it match this pathologos imposition? Or this pathologos model? Because sometimes the tyrant uses persuasion, or pretends to be gentle and friendly to certain people, so long as they don't question the tyranny. So, they use skill of persuasion, with and without words, in a variety of ways. clearly, to deny our own seeing, the false must have had the appearance of being more real for us to sacrifice all of our self stuff, our self-seeing, our self-experience, our self-reflection, our self-goals, our self-understanding, our self-state of mind. We really need to get that one back. We need all of them back, but all state of mind. So what's false must have had the appearance of more. This is why you don't learn beliefs. That's why you can't learn religion when you're older. All religions are childhood things. Because you can't learn beliefs. You learn understanding. I mean, you could say, well, technically scientific beliefs are what you learn when you go to school, but that's true, but it has to be based on reason and evidence. Which is why Muslim babies grow up to be Muslim adults, and Anglican babies grow up to be Anglican adults, and so on and so on. You have to use appearance to make the false seem real. Makes sense when you say it. So we believe it. More real than you're thinking. So sometimes the idea of sin comes up on this channel. I'm not good enough. Why? Because I'm a sinner. I've made a mistake before. That means I'm bad. That means my understanding, my experience is less. But those people with the big hats who never make mistakes, their beliefs I should bollocks. Famously, they are terrible, terrible people. They are well known for the many mistakes they make. Well known for having problems. The people, why? With more authority, you have more opportunity to play out the implications of your pathologos. That's why we say power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Unless we're doing midwifery, which means you have to sacrifice that false belief that you can't understand and somebody else's dumb beliefs are more important than your experience. You've got to sacrifice that crap. And anyone that tells you you're not good enough and you can't think and you have to believe, they are a grifter. And once you see it, you can see it everywhere. So those alpha manosphere pyramid schemes, they try and humiliate people so they don't leave their course, so they can keep getting money. Join a gym and trying to get out from the gym, or they try and make it difficult. You need us. Anyway. You can see it everywhere. Maybe the gym's not a bad example, but marketing, same thing. To deny your own seeing, to give the appearance of the false as more real. That's how you can trick people to act against their own interest through belief, which is why we're interested in understanding. For the transmission of the false belief to be successful, our own reality must be overshadowed. There's that shadow myth, shadow image again, by the power of the authority's personality. Interesting. And the memory of the former state must be depreciated. You forget that you were doing very well before you accepted this crap, and finally forgotten. The pathologos cannot function as the only reality for the believer unless there is amnesia of the other world. So there's two kinds of worlds. There's the true world you were in as you were developing, as you grow up, based on all of those cool self-words, self-reflection, self-goals, self-experience, self-understanding, self-seeing, self-remembering. But as a child, you sacrifice all that entire, so you could put all that as a kind of world. You can't, pathologos can't survive, can't function as the only reality that everything is a reflection of, or everything is seen through, a self-fulfilling prophecy, you could say. Self-confirming ignorance. Unless So it can't be the only reality for the believer unless there is amnesia of the other world. So that's the role of amnesia, to serve the pathologos. Which is interesting because going back to Plato's cave analogy, he talks about us being chained to the shadow of, literally these words here. Oh, there we go. We've discovered a puzzle. The repetition of the word shadow. Now, if we tie it to what we're learning in the positive, in the logos, where does Socrates talk about the shadows? In the cave analogy at the start of Book 7 of the Republic. He uses the cave as an analogy to explain the kind of world most people live in and what we need to escape from in the philosophical quest. So he says that we are chained to the back wall of a dark cave, and we look at some shadows cast on the back wall, cast by a man-made fire. It casts images of man-made objects being carried on the heads of people as they walk behind an overpass. So you can't see the people, you can just see the shadows of those objects from their heads being cast onto that back wall of shadows. And he talks about being chained there, which is interesting because being chained is what we saw in the Phaedo. We're chained to our problems. We need to unchain ourselves from our problems. But he says those chains which prevent you from turning around and seeing the cause of your false images, you don't get from birth. You get from childhood. Interesting that Socrates was talking about being chained to shadows from childhood, being chained to a shadow world, that you sacrifice your real world, the real world outside the cave. Sometimes it's called the cave allegory or the cave analogy, but really it should be called the allegory of the cave and the outer world. There's two parts. The opening screen. There's two parts, the cave and the other world. But here we're saying, hey, to accept the pathologos distorted shadow of reality as the only reality from childhood that we're chained to, we have to have an amnesia of the other world. Interesting, the connections between what we're seeing in philosophy. It is in this sense that the pathologos needs the function of amnesia, since without this forgetfulness there would be the realization of the opposing forces in our lives. So that was the question of this part. What was the question that we started with? The question that should be answered in the text. The word need. What basic need does amnesia serve, as it disguises the dynamics of past learnings? For it blocks recollection of similar events, and it obscures our reflections by limiting our focus to the particular situation in front of us. Disguising its intelligibility. What's that mean? Disguising that it's understandable. What's that mean? Disguising that you can understand and free yourself from it. What's that mean? Disguising that it's actually, you're focused on the immediate thing in front of you, and it's hiding that you've been here before, which means it's a pattern, which means there's an order, which means there's an intelligence, a kind of intelligence behind it, sustaining that order, that pattern, which means you can also understand it because you have intelligence, which means you have the possibility of freeing yourself from your problems. That's the role amnesia serves. And so that's one part of it. The other part is it forgets that there is a whole different world. So that's the amnesia of the moment that hides the intelligibility or the understandability or the solvability of human problems. And also, the amnesia serves another basic need, to forget that there was a whole different self-world. Your world, your goals, your mind, your experience, your seeing, your logos, the self-logos that we are uncovering in philosophy. And, oh, by the way, the Phaedo, what does he say all learning is? All true learning, which is the recovery of the self-logos, remembering. Interesting, the connection between the two, the logos and our midwifery. As a result of the imposition of the pathologos, two worlds are generated. So if you are a writer for the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the Spider-Man universe, where there are many realities or many dimensions, and it's not just those, it's really trendy nowadays to do a multiverse, then hey, get your nose in this book so you can use that mythology or storytelling to reflect what's true and beneficial to yourself and to our world. So two worlds are generated, just like Spider-Man. One is forgotten and one remembered. Ooh. That's the one that's forgotten, gets the one noise. So one forgotten, one remembered. But within the family clan, only one functions fully. What is fashioned through the message becomes a model. Hooray, that's a key word. So we've already seen the key word dialectic, which is why we have those green lines around it. Doesn't really stand out, does it? Let's make it a different color. Make it this color. Yay. And this one too. There we go. There we go. That's standing out nicely. So, the dialectic is a key word that's repeated many, many times and is the essence of what turns philomathesis, the love of learning, into philosophy. And Socrates always, as we're reading in the Meno, this is a key term that has been repeating in the Meno that we are looking at and seeing the significance of. He calls it the paradigm. Dialectic is the paradigm. It's the model of learning, the model of understanding, the model of defining things. Because Meno has a task to define what virtue is. Which is why we can say it is the same dialectic that applies to both. The dialectic model or paradigm. Make some more space. That's why it's the model of understanding. It's a dialectic paradigm or model. Which is why you can apply it to both. So what? Well, the paradigm is the model, the dialectic paradigm is what we're learning in philosophy. Here we see the opposite. Just as the logos is the dialectic of the logos is the paradigm for what's true, this is the model, same word, some more common English word, is the model which, the model which governs what is allowable within and without the clan. So this is the false model, the harmful model that causes our problems based on the clan. What can be revealed, let's use a better color than that. What can be revealed within the clan is protected and gains an exclusivity and almost holy character Interesting. So one of the virtues that we see in philosophy is holiness. And what we see in learning the Logos is a kind of spiritual initiation to the nature of truth and reality. That's nous, that's knowingness. But here we have the opposite. It's a kind of distorted holiness. What can be revealed within the clan is protected, it gains its exclusivity and almost holy character, while the same behavior and words outside the clan are profane and prohibited. For what is allowed within the family is denied without. Right? So what's the thing that we are seeing with Trump and the fascists and the right-wingers and the Nazis and the capitalists and the rich people? One rule for thee, a different rule for me. Right, and all of the propagandists. Whenever Trump says, I'm going to be a tyrant, they say, oh, don't listen to his words. Oh, but Kamala, she said this word out of place. Let's critique her and call her a Nazi. What? So, we are a special family. We are the select group. We are the chosen ones within the family. Sound like anything else? Political, religious, cult, rich people, class. We are the chosen ones. We get to do whatever. We get to have the money. We get to do the genocides. We get to go to heaven. We get to have the rules supporting us. We get to have the jobs. That's the way the world is right now, governed by pathologos, until we wake up and learn this. And become rational, mature, and elevate ourselves to the next stage of evolution and actually be able to solve the problems that we have as individuals and as a species. So, the real world or our self-world is forgotten, while only one is remembered. Okay, within the family clan, only one functions fully. What has functioned through the message becomes a model which governs what is allowable within and without the clan. So what you can reveal within the clan is protected, it's exclusive, right? How many religions have secret ceremonies with a special door, a special Freemason area with special handshakes and you have to be a member of the group to go to heaven or to get the secret teaching or you have to be among the rich class to be able to have stocks. The share market's going up. Oh, that's really good. The economy's going well. But hang on a second, the economy only serves 5% of the people. Oh yes, but we're the special ones. We're better than you. We don't have to work. But for you want jobs. What? No, we don't. Yes, you do. Jobs, 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 jobs. No, if jobs had value, the rich people would buy them all. It's a lie. So what? Well, we are seeing the origin, the cause of that kind of behavior on every level. Literally, legal level, societal level, education level. Wherever there is kind of exclusivity to those who are members of the clan, who they have kind of a holy character. We are the special ones. We are the chosen ones. And so the laws are to protect us, but not restrict us. While for everyone else, the laws are to restrict you, but not protect you. That's why they don't like the police. Okay, that's why they have these movements like defund the police, which is purposely misrepresented because it's not harming police. It's just realizing that that's the role it serves, and the money should be allocated to actually understanding and solving problems, and not exacerbating them with a system that protects the exclusivity within the rich people's chosen group or the white people, because we know that human beings are pathologos. Give them a badge and the gun, they'll just play it out. So, well known for being racist and favoring the rich and beating women. Google 40% of police. Anyway, we are seeing the cause of that. We're not blaming them. because, as we said, blame and anger must be seriously addressed. This isn't a blame game. Where is it? Yes, the problem of blame and anger needs to be seriously addressed. We are not blaming human beings for being human beings and therefore having human problems. We are trying to understand the cause, review and question the conclusions, not the behavior. The behavior is secondary. It can tell you that there is a hidden underlying false conclusion, false belief. To be rational and fair and a midwife is to trace it back to the cause, those conclusions, the false beliefs that we have become identified with. I am a cop, I need to XYZ. I am an Anglican, I need to XYZ. I am a Australian, I must XYZ, and so on and so on and so on. Right? So we don't want to be that. We want to free ourselves from the false identification with the false beliefs we gain from our pathologos so we can be free and not bound and limited and not have amnesia and not sacrifice our self-goals, our self-learning, our self-reflection, our self-understanding, our self-experience so we can reach our self-destiny, which is the destiny for all people. So we call it the destiny of man. And regain the true world. Leave the cave of distorted shadows. So there's an exclusivity of what can be revealed within the clan. You know, you say that you don't say the quiet part out loud is the meme. So, you know, we talk about doublespeak and dog whistles. We can say the things about the other people behind closed doors, but don't say it in public. Don't say the quiet part out loud. As we passed sexist laws or racist laws or fascist laws. Pretend that we are for the working class, that kind of crap. So, similar, but within all people within the pathologos. It's a universal human trait that, if not addressed, will play out in whatever occupation humans have. What can be revealed within the clan is protected, gains an exclusivity, an almost holy character, while the same behavior and words outside the clan are profane. You can't talk about God, you're a heretic. We can, so we're right. And prohibited. For what is allowed within the family is denied without. So this is a kind of injustice in our functioning or behavior that happens as a result of losing the true world, accepting the false world, sacrificing our self and the aspects of self, and amnesia, forgetting that you are a pawn playing out fate, repeating the same problems over and over and over and over and over. Forgetting you think that your problems are just a one-off thing. That's the amnesia. And you forget the past world as well. That's the amnesia, causing you to act in this cultish, you could say, unjust, blocked, negative way at the expense of yourself and the real world. Helped by the functioning of amnesia. So that's section 3. We've gone through it. Hooray. Really interesting stuff, really illuminating stuff, really beneficial stuff. And next time we are going to talk about the wordless transmission. Wow. The transmission of a pathologos is something one concluded about in silence. It was never discussed. The very thing we're doing on this channel, discussing, reviewing, reflecting, talking about, having a community, having chat, having Discord. It's all about the logos and discussion. That is the most important thing. That's what makes philosophy the spiritual paradigm. That's what makes it different. It has words, it has logos. You're not told to shut up and sit on the mat. Don't ask questions. God made a hell for people like you who ask questions, that kind of crap. And this use of words is prohibited. It's made in silence. So it's fantastic to see that the very thing that is the most beneficial, our words that lead us to our destiny, the logos, our words, is the very thing that must be denied to give its distorted shadow and the thing that opposes the words. It's not allowed. The very thing that saves us is the thing that, when removed, causes our problems that block us. Interesting. So next time we're going to learn more about this wordlessness of the transmission. On that teaser, I hope to see you next time, and I hope you enjoyed it today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you are finding some connections and things to wonder about, and I hope you're being challenged, but I hope you are addressing that challenge with wonder, curiosity, and grace, not taking it personal. You're going to miss out if you do that. And if you do, more to reflect on. If you take that block or that taking it personally or that anger and blame game, take that as a puzzle, because you recognize that's not true, but I can learn from it. So many things to wonder about. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.